What's up, everyone? Welcome back to DodgerHeads, presented by DodgerBlue.com, your home for the 2020 World Series champion Los Angeles Dodgers. My name is Jeff Spiegel. I'm joined by Daniel Starkand. Daniel, this is also home of the first place in the NL West Los Angeles Dodgers, currently tied with the San Francisco Giants, who are actually losing to the Diamondbacks. If that game finishes that way, the Dodgers would have a half-game lead on the NL West. They win their 8th in a row. We're back for the second time. We did a rain delay live show talking All-Star game, but 3-3 at the rain delay. They come back to win 5-3. Little bit dicey there at the end, but this is a big win for the Dodgers in a game that felt like it could have gone either way once we hit the rain delay.
Yeah. Not only the first place Los Angeles Dodgers, but also the best record in baseball Los Angeles Dodgers, because the Red Sox lost today. So as of now, the Dodgers and Giants are tied for the best record in baseball. So hopefully the D-backs hang on there, and the Dodgers will be in sole possession of first place. Which would obviously be nice, but yeah, this game it was a long one.
Yeah.
5.5 hours counting the rain delay. We've already done half our show. But yeah, I mean it wasn't a pretty game by any means. You know, I wouldn't say the Dodgers bats were crazy impressive, but they got the job done. The bullpen I feel like we'll get to player of the game, but the bullpen as a whole could take the honors there because they were outstanding. Kershaw only gets to pitch 4 because of the rain delay, and the bullpen comes in and was just lights out to close this thing out.
Yeah, Dodgers win 5-3, 5 runs on 5 hits, no errors. Washington scores just 3 runs on 6 hits, 1 error, the big one that gives the Dodgers the go-ahead run there in the 6th inning. We were joking that it could have been 2 errors on that play, depending on how you wanted to score that one. But the Dodgers came into this game on a 7-game win streak since being no hit. They extend that to 8. I thought this was one of those games where it felt like the Dodgers put out arguably their best lineup. I know Chris Taylor wasn't in there, but A.J. Pollock ends up with an RBI single, if you want to call it that. I mean, that's what it is in the scorebook. Clayton Kershaw on the mound, arguably their best pitcher. So this felt like one of those games where the Dodgers absolutely needed to win. The rain delay throws a wrench into it, but hey, they survive an hour and 44-minute rain delay, and the Dodgers win 5-3 over the Nationals. Again, 8th win in a row. They head into to tomorrow morning's game, which we'll talk about in a minute, which starts in less than about 10.5 hours. The Dodgers will be back on the field. But here's the plan for tonight. We'll do a little bit of recap, reactions to that. We'll take some questions, and then we'll do player of the game to close it out. I'll say this up front because in our last live show, we got a bunch of questions. Daniel and I do a recorded show every Monday. That's where we're going to talk Trevor Bauer. I know lots of people want to ask questions, have thoughts on that. If you want to send us a message on Twitter with specific questions, we'd be happy to answer those on Monday. But we're going to avoid the Bauer talk for tonight and just focus on this. So let's get right into it. I'll start with the lineup. I mentioned this. So often it feels like the Dodgers, even when they have guys healthy, there's always somebody resting. Tonight, when I looked at the lineup, I said, this is actually the best lineup the Dodgers could put out. A couple of people said, hey, what about Chris Taylor? Who, if you saw our last show, I'm standing on the hill of saying he's going to be an all-star. Taylor has not been his best over the last month or so. He's got an OPS of about 720 for the last month, just 3 home runs. On the flip side, you have a guy like A.J. Pollock, who over the last 2 weeks has an OPS over 900. Albert Pujols, we know what he's capable of. So do you agree that, I mean, if you were to put out the Dodgers' best lineup tomorrow, would it be different than the one you saw? Would Chris Taylor take Albert Pujols' slot and then Muncy slides over? Would he take A.J. Pollock's slot against a righty? How would you have played that?
If I'm putting out the best lineup, I still think Chris Taylor is in there, even though he hasn't been as good over the last month. I might honestly consider, putting him at short and over Gavin Lux. I mean, Gavin Lux made some nice plays tonight. He was big there in the late innings with a defensive play and then a walk and a stolen base to score a run. But honestly, regardless of who's in the lineup, I just think the overall state of the Dodgers is a lot better now than it was, a couple months ago. Like they could afford to rest 1 or 2, of their main guys, and they're still putting out, a really good lineup, and that's credit to some of those bench guys. Albert Pujols has been an absolute godsend to this team. He's whatever expectations anyone had for them, he's absolutely exceeded them. And like you said, A.J. Pollock is starting to get hot, so he's now he makes that lineup a lot longer when you got him in the 8 spot. If he's
Yeah.
swinging a hot bat, that's great to see. Gavin Lux was on the base pass, which I want to see. I want to see more of that from him. He's
Yeah.
actually really fast. Like, I didn't really realize that until this year, but when you see him running the bases, he's probably the fastest guy on the team. So we saw him steal a base there. I want to see more of that. He only has 3 stolen bases on the year. But yeah, I think just overall the lineup as a whole is looking a lot better. Things are clicking. Some of the main guys aren't really going right now. Cody still hasn't really
Yeah.
figured much out. Mookie has been kind of up and down. Hasn't really been truly the MVP Mookie this season at all, really. So just the fact that those guys at the bottom are starting to produce, that's just huge overall.
Yeah, absolutely. Great to see some folks in the chat. Danielle on Facebook says, glad this game is over. Kenley had me sweating bullets in the 9th inning.
He
Haven't had
did.
anxiety and heart palpitations in a minute until like 5 minutes ago. Well, maybe since the last time he pitched, because that seems to be his deal, is his first 8 pitches suck, and then everything after it is unhittable. But yeah, Guillermo wants you to know, Daniel, he wants you to get the broom ready in case that's needed.
Hey, I'll have it out here Monday if we take care
go.
of business tomorrow.
So we'll see. Cornbread has a comment about Mark Pryor being amazing, and I'm absolutely going to talk about that because I have some thoughts on Mark Pryor. We're going to get there, so stick around, Cornbread. That's a great observation. But let's get back to this one. This game coming in, you look at the pitching matchup, and it's like, man, no Trey Turner, no Kyle Schwarber for the Nationals. You've got Kershaw pitching for the Dodgers, coming off 8 innings, 13 strikeouts against the Cubs. You've got Paolo Espino on the mound for the Nationals. Admittedly, had not heard of Paolo. Apologies to him. I Googled him. 34-year-old, 65 career innings. This was his 4th start of the season, his 19th total game. He does have a 2.02 ERA coming in 35 innings pitched. But again, like every Cubs pitcher that we saw a week ago, the StatCast was terrible. Here's the biggest one. His whiff percentage was 1st percentile. So basically he has, if not the worst, one of the worst whiff percentages in all of baseball, 16%. 8th percentile in barrel rate, 10th percentile in expected slugging, 13th percentile in hard hit. Does have an elite walk rate. And yet he comes in, Mookie singles to lead off, and then he retires the next 9. And that was kind of the story for the first 3. Kershaw retired the first 10 in order. He did allow a single on the first at bat, but then gave up a double play, got a double play to start. So things were really quiet early. We get to the 4th. That was when the Dodgers broke it open. Max Muncy walk, Justin Turner single, Cody Bellinger walk, which they made a note. The Dodgers draw 2 walks in an inning against a guy who had just 4 walks all season. So credit to Bellinger, credit to Muncy there. Will Smith, first pitch, sacrifice fly. Albert Pujols, fantastic at bat. He gets a sacrifice fly. I tweeted this. If you are an anti-Albert Pujols guy or girl, watch that at bat because that's why the Dodgers want Albert Pujols, because you know he's going to put the ball in play, which with runners at 2nd and 3rd and 1 out, that's all you're asking for. He swings and misses on a nasty curveball on a 1-1 count to go down 1-2. The guy throws an even better curveball on the next pitch, and Pujols, this was an elite foul off on that next pitch. Then the guy comes back with a fastball. He puts it into right field to score Turner. Gavin Lux doubles to make the run through, make this lead 3-0 before an Pollock walk and then a Kershaw ground out to get out. So one thing I was curious after that was the bottom of the 4th. Kershaw makes the last out. It's a long inning. He comes back to pitch. And I'm thinking, okay, how is this going to play out? He actually gets to 2 outs. He does put 2 guys on with a bloop single and then a walk. Yan Gomes comes up. He hangs a slider. Gomes absolutely smashes it. It's 3-3. And then we go to a rain delay. Mookie Betts grounds out, and all of a sudden we're in a rain delay. You and I are on here saying, how's this going to play out? I joked on Twitter. You predicted 6-4. I predicted 7-3. It's 5-3. We can debate later who's right on that one. Thankfully, the Dodgers come out of the rain delay. Bruce Dark-Gratterall with a 1-2-3 inning. John Lester pinch hitting for the Nationals. Interesting decision.
Yeah,
there.
that was weird.
Top of the 6th, the Dodgers tack on. Will Smith draws a hit by pitch. Albert Pujols hits what should have been a double play ball. Error on the shortstop. First baseman drops it. Will Smith goes to 3rd. A.J. Pollock, ground ball, infield single. Dodgers are up 4-3. If you thought the excitement was going to end there, we got Joe Kelly tonight and not Joseph Kelly on the mound for the Dodgers. He gives up a single on a blooper, 70-mile-an-hour exit velocity, ground out, walk, hit by pitch. And this is the Mark Pryor moment. Bases loaded. Mark Pryor comes in with a mound visit to calm him down. Gerardo Parra is the next guy up. Curveball for a strike, curveball for a strike, curveball for a ball, curveball for a strike. Gets out of the inning. I want to pause here because Cornbread points this out, and I've agreed. It feels like every single time Mark Pryor comes out to talk to a Dodgers pitcher to calm them down, it works. It works. It's something, I mean, like, I've never No disrespect to Rick Honeycutt, who has been great, but I feel like if you've ever wondered what difference a pitching coach makes on those moments, it feels like Pryor says the right thing every time. Do you see the same thing, Daniel?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Those mound visits could be, very beneficial, especially when a pitcher's, command is off, they're walking guys. I know when I was pitching, whenever I was off and the coach would come out and talk to me, he wouldn't even say a single word about baseball. He would just say something to make me laugh. And that it worked for me too. So I understand why it works for these pitchers. Sometimes you just got to get your mind in a different place, whatever it is. And I have no clue what Mark Pryor says to those guys. I'm not privy to those conversations, but yeah, it definitely seems to be working. Mark Pryor, he's not a very fiery guy. He seems to be like kind of a calming
Yeah.
presence, which is it's definitely working at least from the outside looking in, I'd say.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So the Dodgers escape that jam. They go into the seventh inning. My guy, Phil Bickford, on the mound. He gives up a single. There's a weird bunt play where Justin Turner drops a bunt, which I guess that didn't get called an error. I'm not entirely sure how that's not an error. It works out great for the Dodgers because he ends up throwing the guy out at second anyways.
Well,
And then
that's why it didn't get called in there because he still
fair,
got an out
fair,
of it.
fair. There you go. Gets a pop out, and then Will Smith throws out Victor Robles trying to steal there. And I tweeted, I mean, Will Smith, like, let me just make a note. Will Smith defensively has been amazing. The only knock
Yeah.
on him compared to Austin Barnes has been defense. Well, according to Fangraphs and Josh Thomas, who's a guy who does a lot on Dodger prospects on Twitter, who I appreciate following him, he pointed this out. I updated it today. Will Smith right now among catchers in all of Major League Baseball is second in defensive wins above replacement. He's third in defensive runs saved, and he's second in framing amongst all catchers. So we're talking about a guy who is top three in every offensive category and top three in every defensive category among catchers. So credit to him. And that was a big moment to throw that guy out to steal. The ninth inning, the Dodgers tack on a couple guys we talked about to start. Gavin Lux draws a walk, steals second. Chris Taylor, RBI single, advances to second on the throw to extend the lead, which was helpful because then Kenley Jansen came in and tried to make a mess of it. He starts the inning off with a single and a walk, and then he goes strikeout, line out to end the inning. At the end of the day, kind of all over the place. You mentioned the bullpen, and I think that's a key place to start as far as just mentioning this. This is why I, for the record, think my run prediction was better than yours, because I said, hey, I don't think the Dodger bullpen's going to give up any runs in this post-rain delay. That's why I said 7-3. It's 5-3, but sure enough, Gratterall, 1 inning, Kelly, 1 inning, Bickford, 1 inning, Trinan, 1 inning, Jansen, 1 inning. They give up 3 hits. They give up 2 walks. They strike out 6. They give up no earned runs. Another great performance from a Dodger bullpen that's been really, really dominant for the last 2 weeks.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, they're all great. You mentioned that the Kelly jam, he was able to get out of that. Kenley was a little shaky, but I mean, Bickford, what else could we say about that guy? Like he's just been an absolute godsend to
Yeah.
this team. He's got an ERA in the ones, and I think he's got like 9 straight scoreless appearances, something like that. So he's been great. Trinan, just his usual filthy self. He got some help from his defense. Gavin Lux made that nice play at short. And honestly, probably the biggest takeaway for me out of the bullpen was Gratterall. I mean,
Yeah.
he looked good. He threw a couple sliders that were pretty sharp, had some sharp downward action on it, which is that was the whole point of him
Yeah.
going down to AAA, was to work on that pitch. His numbers at AAA weren't exactly great, and they probably called him up sooner than when they had hoped. Due to some other circumstances, but he looked good tonight. Quick 1-2-3 inning. He was pounding the zone. He got a strikeout on the slider, which was good to see. So yeah, just overall from the bullpen, that was great stuff. None of them were overworked. I'd have to look at the pitches. I'd say outside of maybe Kelly, like no one threw too many pitches,
Yeah.
which is important because we got another bullpen game tomorrow. So all those guys, should be fresh and ready to go tomorrow, which is good as as the Dodgers go for the sweep.
Yeah, Gratterall 9 pitches, Bickford 7 pitches, Kelly, who you mentioned, 24 pitches. Trinan and Jansen will be the interesting ones. Trinan threw 16 pitches and Jansen threw 18. So Jansen's obviously high stress as well, putting the first 2 runners on. So Trinan, typically a guy that they could run back to back and not have any issues. I would expect he might be your closer tomorrow, given what Jansen had to endure today. But yeah, I mean, even looking at the box score again, we mentioned it. The Dodgers had scored a bunch of runs coming into this game. I believe they had 16 runs in their previous 2 games coming in. This wasn't one of those days. The only guys to reach base twice were Gavin Lux and AJ Pollock, who both had who both had hits and walks. Mookie Betts had a hit, Justin Turner had a hit, and Chris Taylor had a hit. That was it. Max Muncy drew a walk. Cody Bellinger drew a walk. So aside from that, nothing special. They did only strike out 7 times, so credit to them there. But it was just kind of situational baseball, getting guys in when you
Yep.
needed to. That bases loaded situation, right? Like, how often do you get bases loaded, no outs, and you can't really capitalize? They get Will Smith, does exactly what he needs to do. He puts a deep fly ball into right center field. Sac fly moves the guy to third. They try and throw him out. Bellinger gets to move up to second. Pujols fights off the strikeout, deep right field. He's able to score a Turner on a sac fly, move everybody around, and then Gavin Lux doubles in a run. So those are the types of moments then they manufacture with the take advantage of an error. Infield single, scores a run there. And then the Gavin Lux stolen base is what nets them an extra run in the 9th inning as well. So good stuff on the Dodgers there. At this point, let's turn it over. If people have questions or thoughts on the game, we can read those. So drop those in the comments, whether you're in YouTube, Facebook, Periscope, Twitter, like I said. And then we're going to be a little bit shorter than usual tonight just because we already did one show, and we do have an early game tomorrow morning. But we'll get to we'll get to player of the game here in a little bit. Laura Lara is chiming in from Washington. She let us know she was going to be at the game. She's watching. So Laura, congratulations. You were there.
Hope you stayed dry.
Yeah, no kidding. I know. I've been to college football games where there have been rain delays. The famous one I was at, University of Oregon, playing Tennessee. There's like lightning, rain. It's 100,000 people. You're just stuck there. I mean, there's nothing you can do. If you try and like go to the concourse, there's 100,000 other people out there. So, but an hour and 45-minute rain delay is a rough one. Given the time. So, anyways, no big deal there. So she asks, where was Joseph? We have no idea. We have no idea what happened to Joe Kelly. He wasn't as erratic, I would say, as the typical Joe Kelly. Like, it still felt like he could throw strikes when he needed to. It felt like, he just lost control on a couple individual pitches, almost a hit by pitch, a bloop single, that kind of thing. So, yeah, I don't know. We'll see. Okay, well, it doesn't look like we have many comments or questions in the chat, so I guess we'll just jump right to.
I got a couple things I wanted to say about the offense, just to kind of piggyback off, what you're saying. I think what we saw like earlier in the season when the offense was kind of struggling is guys were just kind of trying to do too much. You mentioned that bases loaded situation, which is a perfect example, for me, because like guys weren't trying to hit home runs there. They were just trying to, have productive outs. And that's what ended up working. You don't always have to hit the grand slam or the bases clearing double to be productive. Sometimes it's a sac fly. It's good base running. That's just good baseball. And in that inning, it didn't end up meaning a whole lot. But one example is Bellinger. When he was on first base on Smith's sac fly, he was very alert. He tagged up and took second there, which took away the double play, which was important because with Albert Pujols coming up, I tweeted this, he's the biggest double play threat in baseball just because of how he hits a lot of hard ground balls. We obviously know he's not the most fleet of foot guy. So for Bellinger to take away that double play there, it didn't end up mattering because, Pujols hit the fly ball. But I thought that was, was just a good baseball play right there. So that was really cool to see. And one other thing I wanted to say was, about Smith's defense, like you mentioned, he's been great back there. We knew before this year that he had a good arm. We've seen that, but the framing, especially, you mentioned he's second in baseball in framing. That's absolutely massive right there.
Yeah.
Something else is just his ability to pick balls behind the plate. I forgot what game it was, but I think it was a close game a few nights ago, and Trinan was in there. There was a runner on third. I think it was the tying run on third, and Smith picked 2 balls in the dirt that easily could have gotten away and tied up the game. So yeah, he's been great, and I think that's led to more playing time for him. Like we saw tonight, he caught Clayton Kershaw, which we don't typically see a whole lot. So he's earning more opportunities because of his defense. Like everyone knows he's got the bat. So he's really becoming a complete catcher. Yeah. And with this defense, it's honestly hard to say he's not the best catcher in baseball at the moment. I know Buster Posey's been great, but he doesn't. He sits out, every other game almost, just because of his age, which is smart. But I'd take Will Smith over any catcher at the moment, just because of that defensive improvement.
Totally. Well, and even you look at the 9th inning, that last hitter, Josh Bell. I mean, the first pitch was a slider that was a little down and a little in, and yet he gets it for a strike. And I've talked about it when I think about playoff games and how much I hate sometimes the human element of umpiring, because the difference between a 1-2 count versus a 2-1 count is massive. The difference between a 1-0 versus 0-1. And so if a guy makes a bad call there, it swings things completely. Will Smith
Yeah.
gets a call that's a little inside and a little low. He's able to frame it up for a strike. You could see Bell turn around and say, man, is that the inside? And, so that's huge. It's those little moments where you see how important framing is, because Kenley was a mess. So if he goes into that at bat now 1-0 against Josh Bell's in a comfortable position. Instead, he's a pinch hitter. He's down 0-1, and he goes and swings through a cutter the next pitch, and then he lines out to end the game. So definitely kind of a big moment there that I think speaks to he gets the throw out, he gets the frame, and as you said, I think I know exactly which game you're talking about where he made 2 or 3 big stops. I can't remember. I think it was one of the Giants games. I can't remember which of the two it was.
I think it might have been the first Giants game. I think
because it could have been.
I know it was Trinan on the mound because he was throwing some nasty stuff, and Smith made a couple good picks on when there was a runner on third.
Yeah, totally. Okay, a couple questions. Hawaiian Kira asks who starts tomorrow. I think the expectation, it sounds like via Twitter, is that Edwin Uceda is going to get called up. I would guess maybe they take a guy like Clevenger's spot on the roster, somebody that they can easily send up or down. Again, I don't know. They're sort of running out of those types of guys, I guess. I don't know who else would be the option for who else you could send down.
Robert said tonight, I'm reading on Twitter right now, they haven't decided who's going to start or open yet. It could honestly be anyone just because of the opener. Like we saw Victor Gonzalez start a game the other day when Gonsolin was pitching. So it could be anyone, but I think the expectation is that Price will probably throw two innings or maybe 3 if he's efficient. Uceda will probably throw 2 or 3. And then they'll just piece it together from there. But it's a full-on bullpen game. I wouldn't expect anyone to throw more than, maybe 3 innings, but probably even 2, honestly.
Yeah, and Uceda, like I said, Uceda is not currently on the active roster. So I'm just looking through, who's, again, I think Clevenger is the only guy that they could probably option without having any issues. I mean, I think... Oh, go ahead.
Sorry. Just reading something else on Twitter. Dave Roberts said that Edwin Uceda can be pushed to 75 to 80 pitches if necessary. For him to get anywhere close to that, he would have to, be successful, which we haven't seen a lot out of him. But I guess it's comforting knowing that, he can go that long if need be. Just because, after, the bullpen covered 5 innings tonight, a bunch of innings the other night when Gonsolin pitched. They're a little taxed at the moment, so it's good that he can give that length. But that all depend on how he pitches, I guess.
Yeah, totally. And I mean, so that's one of the interesting things with the Dodgers is so often we just think, oh, just call this guy up. Well, on the offensive side, Souza is basically the only guy that would make sense to drop at some point. And because of his major league experience, I believe that they cannot just send him straight to AAA. It could be the same thing with Nate Jones, where even if he clears waivers, he can opt out to become a free agent if he so chooses. So I'm sure the Dodgers are hesitant to do that, although I think he's enjoyed his time, so maybe they would get lucky with him. And then on the pitching side, I think Clevenger's basically the only guy left. Again, Bickford would probably be the other possibly, but his ERA is like 2.5, and that's including a couple really rough outings right at the beginning of his stint. You look at who else is on the roster, Buehler, Gonsolin, Gonzalez, Gratterall, I suppose they could send back down. That actually might make some sense. Maybe it's Gratterall would be the guy that would get optioned if they need it. But anyways, to answer the question, I think Price and Uceda probably we would both say are the guys that I would expect to see the most of tomorrow, and then it's kind of an all hands on deck. Besides Joe Kelly, maybe Kenley Jansen, I would expect everybody else to pretty much be available there as well. So a couple more questions here before we get to player of the game. Ryan W. asks this, and then Hawaiian Kira kind of the same thing. What type of guys would you be looking to pick up before the trade deadline if you're the Dodgers? This is something we've talked about, but I do think this conversation evolves over time. What's interesting to me is exactly what I just talked about. So we all expect Corey Seager to come back at some point, and we expect after the All-Star game, it sounds like, right after the All-Star game, I think is the deadline, the date they're hoping for. And then Scott Alexander is eligible to be activated, I believe, any day. So Alexander would make sense to take the place of a guy like Clevenger. Seager would make sense to take the place of a guy like Souza. When you talk about trading someone, whose spot on the roster are they going to be taking? If you trade for a bullpen piece, then presumably it's Gratterall who goes back down to the minors and is not part of the major league roster. If you trade for an offensive piece, I mean, I don't know whose spot they're taking. Like, the only backups that you would have would be Pujols, Beatty, McKinstry, and plus like the Pollock Taylor type. So that's the thing for me, is that when you think about all the moving pieces, not to mention 40-man roster spots, et cetera, I don't know. I mean, I've said bullpen piece for so long, but
Yeah.
Bickford has been good. You have Gratterall, who has the potential to be good, and you trust so many of those guys. I just don't know where the roster spot comes from, I guess is what I'm saying.
Yeah, yeah, no, you're absolutely right. We talked a couple weeks ago. We were mainly focused on bullpen pieces, and like you just said, with Bickford throwing the way he is, with Gratterall flashing his potential tonight. I mean, we all know what he's capable of. We see the stuff. We see him out there
Yeah.
throwing 101. He was a key bullpen piece last year. In the postseason. So I don't think it's crazy to think he could at least get back to that or close to it at least, where he's at least like a low leverage type of guy. And also, Joseph Kelly, his emergence as well. He's been throwing well,
Yeah.
outside of tonight. Although he was scoreless tonight, so I guess he could take solace in that, even though he didn't look
It,
all that
it's
great.
like
But
Pollock's RBI single in the
yeah,
box score. It doesn't really
yeah,
matter how he got there.
yeah. But the point I'm making is just the overall state of the bullpen, and it's the
Yeah.
same thing you were saying. The bullpen's looking pretty solid right
Yeah.
now, and with the recent Bauer stuff
Yeah.
going on, I think honestly a starting pitcher is probably more of
Yeah.
a need at the moment.
100%.
With who knows where he's going to be, but if he's done, then the team only has four starters. We're right back in the spot where we were when Dustin May went down and Gonsolin wasn't ready yet, where they have a bullpen game every fifth day. You're not going to go, the whole season with that.
Yeah.
I don't think Uceda is really an option to be a full-time fifth starter. Josiah Gray still hasn't pitched yet, so who knows about him? So you might have to pick up a
Yeah.
starter. And I'm not saying to go out and get a Max Scherzer, who I did suggest, and I definitely wouldn't be opposed to that. But you need someone you
Just
just
to
need
eat
depth.
innings.
You need a fifth starter. You don't need an ace or a number two. Like, you still got that even without Bauer. You still have Bueller, Kershaw, Julio. That's as good of a 1, 2, 3 as there is in baseball.
Yeah.
And I know
Excellent.
Gonsolin hasn't looked great yet, but we're still hopeful that he'll get back to being his usual self at some point. So if he's your number four, that's not bad. You just need an innings eater,
Yeah.
as a number five guy.
Yeah, absolutely. And to one point that you made, Josiah Gray, he was actually mentioned by Dave Roberts before the game as somebody that we know they were expecting to put him in as a turn in the rotation after Dustin May. Then he hurt his shoulder. He is now building himself back up, and he's the guy that was mentioned by Dave Roberts as this would be a guy that could potentially get some shots at that fifth turn. He's the Dodgers' top pitching prospect. He's one of the top 50 prospects in all of baseball, depending on where you look. But he hasn't pitched in the major leagues before. He's not on the 40-man roster. A guy I wish would get more mention is Andre Jackson. He's representing the Dodgers in the Futures game. He's already on the 40-man roster. He's a guy Justin Lorber and I talked about who has been really good statistically this year. His strikeouts are up, his walks are down. So he could be another guy that could get some shots. We've seen Uceda. We've seen Mitch White. We've seen, Gerardo Carrillo hasn't gotten his shot either, but that might tell you something. Although I guess the same could be said about Andre Jackson as well. So, yeah, I agree with you. I think the fifth starter is something to watch. And Hawaiian Kier asked, will Price be moved to the rotation? It doesn't sound like that. It doesn't sound like David Price is going to be stretched out. Ditto for Jimmy Nelson. I think both of those guys, they like what they bring to them in the bullpen. They don't want to risk health-wise anything. I think what's interesting now is we've kind of always said, oh, well, you got these top three guys, so Julio could kind of be this flexible dude once you get to the playoffs. So that's the question. If you want Julio to be your bullpen ace come playoff time, then you actually do need to go get a guy who can start a playoff game. If you're
Yeah.
comfortable with Julio, because keep in mind, we've talked about this. Julio has already set a career high for innings pitched this season.
Mhm.
So we're not even we're exactly halfway through the season, basically.
Yeah.
So keep in mind, even if you go and get a pitcher, you're still banking on all five of your pitchers then staying healthy. And you're going to want to rest Bueller. You're going to want to rest Kershaw at some point and give them breaks. So there's a lot of moving pieces. I agree with you. I think starting pitching is definitely moved to the top of the list as far as needs. Again, you and I will break down the Bauer situation a lot more. I think we can summarize it by saying if you had to bet whether or not he pitches again for the Dodgers or not, I think the smart money would be on no.
Yeah.
Just based on everything that's come out and based on some of the newer rumblings that it might be worse than even what we've heard so far, etc.
Yeah.
Again, we'll do more of a breakdown of that on Monday. But I agree with you. Starting pitching, I think, has surpassed definitely the offense, because I think the offense you're starting to see when Seager comes back and you've got McKinstry and Pujols and Beatty as your 3 bench bat, plus, either Taylor or Pollock, that you're going to be great there. You're going to be totally fine. And then I think the bullpen has proven itself to be really, really good as well. So I think starting pitching is the option. It'll be curious to see what can they get out of Josiah Gray. What can they get out of, maybe somebody else. There's a number of young arms that the Dodgers have not on the 40-man roster that might be able to contribute in some form or fashion. Do they stretch out of David Price? I mean, as the days go on, I start to think Price was going to be a starter. So it's not like he's like Jimmy Nelson, who's coming off shoulder and elbow injuries, and they're like, hey, we need to play it safe. Price would be the guy. They do have some time with the All-Star break and that kind of thing moving up. So who knows what they decide to do. It sounds like they do have options if they like Josiah Gray enough, if they have some of these other guys that can, if Uceda, they think they can get to 80 innings. If he can get you 4 innings, then that's not necessarily a full-fledged bullpen game like we've been seeing as well. So it's interesting. People are mentioning Scherzer in the chat. I mean, it doesn't hurt if you provide a 4-game sweep to the Nationals and you want to knock them out of contention.
Yeah.
Those two things play, and you're already over the luxury tax. Scherzer's going to be a free agent at the end of the year. I know he said he wants an extension, but who knows if the national situation gets ugly enough? Maybe he says, "Fine, send me to LA for a year. Let me go compete for a chance to win another title, and then we'll figure it out from there." Who knows?
Yeah. With the Scherzer thing, I was gonna say, a few days ago, it was looking like the Nats weren't gonna sell. They were in the mix. I think they were like 14-3. Kyle Schwarber's hitting 2 homers a game.
Yeah.
And here we are 3 days later. The Dodgers are on the border. On the verge of sweeping them. Schwarber is now out for potentially a while. So yeah, who knows? Maybe the Nats become sellers. Like you said, Scherzer has mentioned he'd like an extension. I don't know how plausible that is. But obviously Max Scherzer is a great pitcher, and if you add him to this rotation, that's pretty scary.
Big Show Entertainment asked, don't the Rockies have a starter we can snag? They have a couple guys who have been good. The Rockies aren't going to trade to the Dodgers is the problem.
That's the issue right there. Because like you said, Marquez has been solid. John Gray just came back from injury. He had a good start the other day. So yeah, those would be great options. But like you said, I don't know if the Rockies are very interested in dealing with the Dodgers.
Dig in. Laura asks about the David Price hesitation. I kind of talk myself. I could see it both ways. What would your take be if you were Dave Roberts and the Dodgers? Would you just stretch David Price out to be your 5th starter, knowing that you probably even need 6 starters for the second half? Or do you like him in the role that he's in and you just sort of roll the dice with either making a trade or trusting a Josiah Gray / Edwin Uceda bullpen game type of thing once every 6 days?
Yeah, I mean, if it was up to me, I would have stretched out Price a long time ago. I would have done it right after Dustin May went down and Price came back from, I think he had like a calf injury or whatever it was. I would have used that time to stretch him out, just to avoid all the bullpen games they had there guys were getting overworked early in the season. I would have done it then. To me, the hesitance from the Dodgers side to do it, I think that tells us something. Obviously, that they really don't want to do it. Now we've seen 2 starters go down, and a guy who's been a starter his whole career seems like the obvious choice to take that place. He's competing for a starting spot in spring training, but I think it's clear they don't want to do that for whatever reason. I don't know if it's a fear of injuries. I don't know what it is, because it's not like he's been overworked. He's only thrown like 25 innings this year. So if he has, half a season as a reliever, half a season as a starter, that's not like some crazy workload, especially for a guy like David Price, who's a veteran. Like he's been doing this for, however many years. So yeah, I'm not exactly sure why, but I think it's pretty clear that they don't want to go that route for whatever reason.
Yeah, and I guess you could make sense of, hey, when he came back, he was coming off of injury. They wanted to build him up slowly. That makes sense. But keeping in mind too, he didn't pitch last year, so he's fully rested. And 2 years ago, sabermetrically, he was a really good starting pitcher. So this is a guy that we were talking about could have been the number 4 starter to begin the year, ahead of Dustin May, ahead of potentially Julio Urias, statistically, and yet they send him to the bullpen. He kind of volunteers. We talked a lot about that in the offseason. But the more I think about it, the more I think that move kind of makes sense, mostly because, again, at some point you're going to need a 6th starter, whether it's just to give guys a break, whether it's to give Julio 2 weeks off to just, phantom IL trip, or just somebody's going to get injured.
I was going to say they've actually gotten lucky. I mean, outside of Dustin May in this Bauer situation, like their top 3 guys, Julio, Kershaw and Bueller, none of those guys have missed a single start. So
Yeah,
so that's
or
been
Bauer.
huge. But yeah, like you said, yeah, an injury could happen at any time. You want to limit guys' innings. So I'm with you. I think a sixth starter could definitely be in play at some point. So yeah, I'm not sure why they're not stretching out David Price, but I'd like to see them do that. At least going into the All-Star break, you're gonna have a week off, so
Yeah.
that could be he could throw a simulated game at some point there. Like that, I think now is the time to do it if you're gonna do it.
Yeah, one last question here. This is from one of our loyal listeners. Jeff Spiegel on Twitter wants to know, on a scale of 1 to 10, what do you think about the navy blue 4th of July hats? If 1 is the alternate hats that got leaked with all the different numbers and pictures all over it, and 10 is the Dodgers standard hat that I'm wearing with the World Series champions logo on the
Yeah.
side of it. On a scale of 1 to 10, where do you put these navy blue hats?
I'm gonna give it a 3. They're not great by any means. I don't know why they're the
So
navy blue
bad.
color. Like I think honestly, the hat itself isn't horrible. Like if they were the regular Dodger blue color, I think I'd be kind of in. Like,
Yeah.
but they went with navy for whatever. I'm glad they didn't go with red because I was watching a little of the Padres game today, and they were
They were
wearing
both.
like their brown jerseys with red
Oh,
hats.
gosh.
That just looked disgusting. So I'm gonna go with a 3. They're not quite on the level of the area code hats, but still pretty bad.
I've got him as a 2. I've got him as a 2. I think every team either has navy or red, so I think that's why it was those two. They weren't going to give the Dodgers red, but oh my
Yeah,
gosh, they're
I'm
so
glad. I'll
terrible.
take navy over red. I'll say that. That's
Totally.
why I give it a 3, I guess.
Totally. Okay. Some people asking about Bauer again. You might be just joining us. Daniel and I are going to record a show on Monday morning, and the number one talking point of that is going to be the Bauer situation. So stay tuned for that. We didn't want to do this in a live post game show where we had some other stuff to talk about, and it wasn't necessarily like super obvious and pressing. So let's end with this. If you're joining, Fernando likes the Navy hat, so shout out to you, Fernando. There's probably plenty available to purchase somewhere. So let's do player of the game. If you're joining us on YouTube, Facebook, Periscope, as always, we appreciate you. Thanks for clicking the subscribe and ring the notification bell. Who do you have as player of the game? Let us know in the chat there. Daniel, I'll start with you. Kind of a challenging one here, but if you had to pick a player of the game for the Dodgers, who would you go with?
I'm choosing 2 guys here. I'm cheating a little bit, but I'm gonna go. It's a combination of Brusdar Graterol and Phil Bickford.
Oh, my
Uh,
guy.
just because A, they were both lights out tonight, but B, just kind of looking forward. Like when you look at the Dodgers roster, we just talked about it. The overall state of the bullpen's really good right now. Those 2 guys in Clevenger are
Yeah.
the bottom 3 on the totem pole right now, I'd say, and they're looking pretty darn good. So good outings for them. I'd love to see more going forward, especially out of Grouterall. If he doesn't get optioned tomorrow, we'll see, I guess. But yeah, those guys were great. There wasn't some super obvious player of the game, so
Yeah.
I'm going with those 2.
A number of people threw this name out there, and when I think about it, I think it's actually probably a great choice. So Ryan W. gets a shout out, Big Show Entertainment, Dana as well, THP, all mentioned Gavin Lux, and I think that's a totally fair one. Again, he was one of the guys that I mentioned, I believe, that reached twice. So he was 1 for 3 with a walk. He also had a stolen base, as well as some great defensive plays
Yeah,
in the field. So to me, you add all of that up, and it's huge. I mean, he had the RBI, right, to go ahead 3-0. He manufactured a run by himself, basically, with a walk and a stolen base, and then scored on a pretty. I mean,
he
how
had to
many other
hold up.
guys, aside from
Yeah,
Mookie Betts, you tweeted about it, aside from Mookie Betts, nobody on the Dodgers scores on
yeah,
that because it was
he had
basically
to
a
hold
pretty
up.
hard
Yeah,
line drive right over the top of the shortstop. So he had to wait to make sure that it got down. And then once it did, the left fielder got a head start on him basically, and he scored really easily. So I think Gavin Lux is a great choice. I hadn't made mine yet, but I think that's the right decision.
yeah.
Absolutely. Let's see. I mean, yeah, I think like you could go. Part of me wanted to. I mean, for basically all but one batter, Clayton Kershaw was fantastic tonight. He retired 10 guys in a row. The problem is he gives up the bloop, then the walk, and then makes the one mistake, right? It was a classic Clayton Kershaw in the playoffs type of start where he's really, really good until like a 6-pitch sequence where he
Yeah.
makes one mistake and everybody that he allows onto base comes to score. So that
Yeah.
was a tough one.
And I think if it weren't for the rain delay, like his pitch count was
Yeah,
was
54.
very manageable. So this could have been like a 8 inning performance out of him, 3 runs, because like you said, he was great outside of the one pitch. So I think the rain delay maybe might have cost him player of the game.
You know what? I'm gonna go outside the box to a guy I've already mentioned once. Mark Pryor. Mark Pryor gets my player of the game tonight. That was a
Okay.
huge moment. That was a huge moment to come out and the bases loaded. Joe Kelly is Joe Kelly and not Joseph Kelly, and he calms him down. Kelly, I mean, it was a guy who couldn't throw strikes to a guy who threw 4 straight strikes to get out of the inning. I know it was Gerardo Parra, who's not very good, although he historically always kills the Dodgers for whatever reason.
And the
But
baby shark needs to go.
yeah, good Lord.
Come
Yeah.
on, Washington. No.
So Joe Kelly, so up until the point when Mark Pryor came into the game, Joe Kelly had thrown 20 pitches and 8 of them were strikes. He had thrown 12 balls and 8 strikes. Mark Pryor comes out, talks to him, bases loaded, 4 consecutive strikes to get out of it. So shout out to Mark Pryor. He gets some love. Yeah, some people like Jose Kelly. There's the third option. You got Joe, Joseph, and Jose. I'm not really sure what Jose is, other than the guy wearing the mariachi jacket in the White House.
That's
I don't know what the pitching version of Jose is. I guess is
Yeah,
what
I
I'm
don't
getting
know.
at. There's Joe and Joseph, very clearly distinguished. You have a couple people on here. Cornbread and Ryan both agree with you that the baby shark thing is cringy. True Blue asks, "What's up with Nate Jones? He got DFA'd, cleared waivers, and chose not to report to AAA. So he's a free agent, I believe." Mark
Yeah.
Pryor is our pitching coach, for those wondering, as well. So, yeah, but there you go. The Dodgers win 5-3. They've won 8 in a row. I guess I could try and get a score update on whether or not the Giants have done anything. I don't know if they're still beating or if they're still losing to the
They're
Diamondbacks.
losing 5-4 in the bottom of the 7th.
Okay, so you can pretty much assume that the Diamondbacks are going to find a way to blow that game, and that the Dodgers will still be a half game out after the end of tonight. But
Hey, Padres lost tonight, which is good. I mean, they're now 4 games behind the Dodgers. So the Dodgers have kind of made up the ground that they lost by getting swept by the Padres over the last week, which is good, because I think we're both in agreement that I think ultimately this division, I think the Padres are still more of a threat than the
yeah,
Giants, long term.
which is hilarious. This is what the Padres do. They dominate the Dodgers and lose to
Yeah.
everybody else. So
It's their
I'm
World
not.
Series whenever they fit.
Yeah,
Whenever they
exactly.
face the Dodgers.
Exactly. Okay, I'll leave with this one, Daniel. Tomorrow, Joe Ross on the mound for the Dodgers. Of course, Trevor Bauer not starting for the Dodgers. And so he will be, the Dodgers are throwing a bullpen game. We think David Price, Edwin Uceda probably will get a lot. Maybe Victor Gonzalez to start. Who knows? Joe Ross, 4 ERA on the year. He's been really up or down. There have been moments when he's been on my fantasy roster and I've loved him. And then there's
Yeah.
other moments where I quickly drop him afterwards. So he's kind of a roller coaster. Do you bring out the broom on Monday morning is the question that people want to know, Daniel.
Yeah, I absolutely think we're bringing out the broom. Just when you look at that Nationals lineup, like if Trey Turner's not playing and Schwarber's out, there's
Yeah.
there's not a whole lot of guys in there that scare you. I
Yeah.
know Juan Soto's still Juan Soto, but even him, he's been like slightly above average this year. Like so,
Yeah.
that lineup isn't daunting. Even though it is a bullpen game for the Dodgers, I still don't see how the Nats score a lot of runs. So I'm gonna go 7-2 Dodgers tomorrow, and I'll be sitting right here Monday morning with my broom.
Yeah, I mean, we like where the Dodger offense is. I know they struggled today. Weird game. They got things going in the fourth, and then the rain delay hits, and they were able, thankfully, to manufacture runs a couple of times. But I wiped this one out and say, hey, 16 runs. They made 21 runs in 3 games. You feel good about that. And we like the Dodger bullpen. For most teams, the bullpen game is a danger zone. Obviously, Uceda isn't a guy that we include when we say we like the bullpen. But
Yeah.
if Uceda can give you 2 innings and you get 7 from a bunch of guys that you genuinely trust at this point, then you feel pretty good about that. So I'm with you. I wouldn't be surprised if it's a little high scoring. You said 7-2. Maybe I'll steal. I'll steal yours. I'll say 6-5. We'll flip
Okay.
places here a little bit. I'll say
Okay.
6-5 Dodgers. I think a lot of runs get scored tomorrow. So if you want to look at the over, probably a nice bet there. But I'll say 6-5 Dodgers. Maybe Uceda gives up 3 runs and they patch together some there. So, and yes, as Hawaiian Kira points out, early start tomorrow. It's 10:12 West Coast right now.
Yeah,
The game
I'm
starts
going
at
to bed
8:10.
as soon as we wrap up this show.
8 a.m. tomorrow. 8 a.m. tomorrow is when the game will be. And then Daniel and I will be recording Monday morning as well. So if you've got questions, mailbag questions about Bauer, etc., send them to Dodger Blue on Twitter. Send them to Daniel or I on Twitter. You see our handles there as well. So we're going to let people go. As we said, it's 10:15. This game started 6 hours ago. Rain delay. Here we are. You can always count on Daniel and I. Whatever game we're doing will probably go long.
Seriously.
This is the only one with the rain delay so far. Of course, it's just fitting. My wife and newborn both love me for that. So we appreciate you watching. Notification bell, subscribe, tell your friends. Daniel and I will be back Monday. If you missed it, we did a show earlier tonight talking about the All-Star Game selections, which will be announced tomorrow on ESPN. We made our predictions for who we think on the Dodgers will make it. There's 8 guys that we think have compelling cases. I think we both said we expect 6 or 7 to make it. You can listen to which guys we think are in and which guys might be out. I also did an interview. I've got an interview this week coming up with Justin Lorber. We're going to preview the MLB draft, which is, I believe, a week from tomorrow. So that should be a fun one as well. So we appreciate you guys. We appreciate you for watching. Enjoy the rest of your night. Get to sleep so you can wake up early and watch the Dodgers win. And hopefully we see Daniel with the broom on Monday morning.
Yep.
The best team holding a trophy high in the air. The Los Angeles Dodgers, champions of the baseball world.